All right, listener. Someone named Tom dropped this article in our inbox. And let me tell you, it's a doozy. It's called You Only Think You're White
Yeah.
by the Appalachian Guerrilla.
Yeah.
And it's got us thinking differently about identity.
Yeah, it's a real thought provoker, that's for sure. The Appalachian Guerrilla makes a compelling case that the traditional labels of a white, black, or even American are way too simplistic in today's world.
Exactly. And he starts with his own story, right? He's the grandson of Italian immigrants, grew up in Appalachia. And he says he never quite felt white hanging out with other white folks. Ever felt that way yourself, listener? Like you were straddling different worlds?
Many of us can relate to that, even if our backgrounds are different. What's clever is how the Appalachian Guerrilla uses this personal anecdote to launch into a whole new way of looking at identity.
Yeah, he's not just saying, oh, I'm a little bit Italian, a little bit Appalachian. He lays out these 4 distinct layers of identity that he thinks we all have.
Right. It's like he's peeling back the layers of an onion to reveal what's underneath. First, he talks about what he calls empirical designation. It's the broad label that someone from a different part of the world might use for you. Like to someone in Europe, we're all just Americans.
Right, just a big old category. But then it gets more interesting. He dives into ethnicity, which is all about your ancestral roots, your family tree, Italian, Irish, Senegalese, Japanese, whatever's in your DNA.
It's about acknowledging the tapestry of cultures and histories that make you you.
Exactly. But then he doesn't stop there. He goes on to nationality. But he says it's not just about your passport. He thinks it's more about the region and culture you connect with most deeply.
He uses himself as an example he identifies as Appalachian, which speaks volumes about his values, his way of life, even his accent. It's about the local community, the place where you feel most at home culturally, even if it's not the whole country.
So you can feel more Texan than American.
Yeah.
Or more like a New Yorker than anything else. It's about where your heart is culturally speaking. Okay, so that's 3 layers down, 1 to go. And this last one is where the Appalachian Guerrilla throws us a curveball. He calls it corporate designation.
And this is where his argument takes an interesting turn. He's basically saying that corporations, and by extension governments, like to put us in these simplified boxes, often just white or non-white. And it's not just about being politically correct. He thinks there's something deeper at play here.
Okay, so walk us through this. What's he getting at with this whole corporate designation thing?
Well, it's like this. Imagine a giant corporation, right? They don't really care if your family came over from Italy or Ireland or Senegal. They just need to know how to market to you, how to put you in a box that makes their algorithms happy.
So instead of valuing all the unique threads in our cultural tapestry, they just want to dye everything beige and call it a day.
Essentially. And the Appalachian Guerrilla argues that this kind of simplification serves a purpose. It makes it easier to sell us things to get us to buy into a certain way of life. He connects this to all sorts of historical trends too, which is where it gets really fascinating.
Okay. Yeah, the article takes some unexpected turns. He starts talking about oil urbanization, the Cold War, light reading. But somehow he manages to tie it all back to this idea of identity.
Exactly. For example, he talks about how the rise of oil and globalization led to this massive shift towards urbanization. People moved to cities for jobs, for opportunities. But in the process, many of them were also kind of uprooted, separated from their families, their communities, their traditions.
So instead of identifying primarily with your local town or your specific cultural heritage, you're now just another face in the urban crowd.
Right. And that plays perfectly into the hands of corporations, who are more than happy to provide a new kind of identity, one built around consumerism and being part of the global market.
It's that old saying, when in Rome, buy what everyone else is buying.
Exactly. And he even brings up NAFTA, the trade agreement. He argues that while it had economic benefits for some, it also accelerated this trend of cultural homogenization.
Makes sense. Open up trade, and suddenly everyone's got access to the same products, the same brands, the same pop culture. It's a recipe for a kind of cultural blending, for better or for worse.
Right. And the Appalachian Guerrilla doesn't shy away from the complexities. He acknowledges that globalization has connected people in amazing ways too, but he wants us to be aware of the potential downsides, the ways in which our local cultures and identities can be flattened out, you could say.
Like a pancake.
Exactly. And he doesn't stop there. He even argues that the college system, especially with its focus on preparing students for corporate careers, plays a role in all of this.
Whoa, no, hold on. How does getting a college degree tie into this whole identity thing? Shouldn't education help us understand ourselves and the world better?
You would think so, right? But the Appalachian Guerrilla argues that by pushing students towards certain career paths, certain values that align with corporate success, Colleges can inadvertently discourage them from embracing their unique backgrounds.
This is like, go to college, get a good job, and oh, by the way, try not to rock the boat too much.
In a way, yes. He's not saying it's a conspiracy or that all colleges are out to squash individuality, but he's raising some thought-provoking questions about how our institutions, even those with good intentions, might be contributing to this trend of cultural homogenization.
Wow. Okay, listener, are you starting to see how deep this rabbit hole goes? We're talking about corporations, history, education. It's all connected. But the big question is, what do we do with all this information?
That's where the Appalachian Gorilla's call to action comes in. He's not just diagnosing a problem, he's offering a solution. And it's a surprisingly simple yet powerful one.
So what's the solution? What does the Appalachian Gorilla want us to do with all this newfound knowledge about corporate designations and cultural homogenization?
He wants us to reclaim our heritage, to celebrate our unique identities, and to use those identities as a source of strength and resistance against these homogenizing forces.
Okay, but what does that look like in practice? Does it mean we all need to go back to wearing lederhosen or doing traditional basket weaving?
Not necessarily. It's not about clinging to the past or trying to recreate some idealized version of our heritage. It's about recognizing the value of those unique traditions, those stories, those perspectives that have been passed down to us and finding ways to integrate them into our modern lives.
So it's about taking those threads of our past and weaving them into the tapestry of our present.
Exactly. It might mean learning about your family history, cooking traditional recipes, connecting with your local community, or even just reflecting on the values and beliefs that have been shaped by your heritage. It's about recognizing that these things are not just relics of the past. They're part of what makes you you.
And the Appalachian Gorilla argues that by embracing these different facets of ourselves, by celebrating our unique identities, we can push back against this idea that we all need to fit into neat little boxes.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that our differences are not a weakness, they're a strength. They make us more resilient, more creative, more connected to the world around us. And they make life a heck of a lot more interesting.
He's really advocating for a kind of cultural revival, isn't he? A celebration of diversity in all its forms.
He is. And he connects it to this idea of resistance. He argues that by embracing our unique heritages, by building strong local communities, we can resist this pressure to conform, to become just another cog in the global machine.
So it's about more than just knowing where your great-grandparents came from. It's about understanding how those roots, those traditions, those stories can inform your values, your worldview, your place in the world.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that our identities are not static. They're dynamic. They're shaped by our pasts, but they're also constantly evolving through our present experiences, through our interactions with others, through the choices we make every single day.
It's a powerful message, isn't it? That we have the agency to shape our own identities, to draw strength from our heritage, and to use that strength to build a more vibrant and interconnected world.
It is, and it's a message that I think resonates deeply in our current moment, a time when so many are searching for belonging, for meaning, for a sense of purpose.
It's a call to embrace the complexity, the richness, the beauty of our diverse identities.
Right.
And to recognize that those things that make us unique are not something to be hidden or ashamed of, but something to be celebrated and shared with the world.
Beautifully said.
Listener, it seems like we've reached the bottom of this particular deep dive. We've explored the layers of identity, unpacked the forces that shape us, and even uncovered a call to action.
And perhaps most importantly, we've been reminded that even in a world that often feels fractured and divided, there's still immense power in embracing our shared humanity and celebrating our differences, and in weaving together those unique threads that make us who we are.
Kind of said it better myself. So until next time, keep asking those big questions, keep exploring those hidden connections, and keep diving deep. All right, listener, someone named Tom